Welcome to Victoria Rumble Room, a show with thrills and spills and hopefully some good information about things on Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada, the world. And we try to remain focused on the important issues. And speaking of focused, the man who's the most focused person I know, who is standing on guard for thee, a crossover in Saanich, is the artist formerly known as the Croatian sensation, John Jurisic.
I tell you, we're going to have to do a show just on your introductions, one after the other, because they are award-winning. Award-winning. Yes, that's right. The artist, formerly known as the Croatian sensation.
Well, you distance yourself from the Croatian sensation last week. You said you were the Tulip Street sensation. You were saying that because of Thanksgiving, but I'm just
now currently known as the Tulip Avenue sensation.
Exactly. The Tulip Avenue sensation.
Yeah. I likely feel a little bit more comfortable with that. But you're right. Tons of things that we get to talk about, and almost all of them always sort of foundationally come back to this pandemic, COVID-19. And coming up in a few moments, a very special guest, Dr. Bill Cavers, recently retired GP, is going to talk about the rise of the variant, the need for booster shots in the future, the continued resistance, which I will never, ever understand, of some people to get the vaccinations. This all is driving me crazy this post-Thanksgiving weekend.
Absolutely, John. I feel exactly the same way. And it's driving me crazy, the way that we're hearing people saying they want to have more science. They need more scientific evidence that, first of all, the vaccine is safe, and B, that it really works. Well, guess what? The proof is in the pudding. Look at the lines of people going in now to emergencies who are not vaccinated. The large majority of people in there that really are sick is because they haven't had a shot. And as for these resistors, well, they're not really worried about science as much as they're worried about the science fiction that they get on all of these blogs that are anti-mask, anti-vaccine, and some are even questioning whether the pandemic is real. And I'm just saying, I hope that these resistors finally see the light, because we don't really want to see more people get sick.
I just love ya. Maybe it's all that turkey. So well said, Robin. And we'll dig into COVID and a few issues with our special guest. I can't wait. However, problem number 2, the ongoing issues around policing and crime and morale in downtown Victoria. We recently had Councillor Stephen Andrew on our show. We talked about the terrible situation downtown. It was literally our highest viewed session. Tons of sharing. Clearly, lots of people very, very interested and concerned. Stephen took a tour in downtown through Pandora and the tents. There was a significant impact on him to see that. And he paints a very disturbing, unsettling picture, one that I've experienced myself personally. He's being attacked on the internet by trolls and opponents and all kinds of crazies. So let's zoom him in and hear his opinion on all of this.
And now joining us in the Victoria Rumble Room is Victoria Councillor Stephen Andrew, who's back a little sooner than we first planned, but then a lot has happened. Stephen Andrew was on our show, was talking about what was going on with the Victoria Police. He's been down checking out on the ground how services have been meted out, and he's getting a lot of pushback. There's been trolling going on online, people getting angry at Stephen Andrews, saying he's just making political points to run to be mayor of Victoria. So what say you, Councillor?
Well, whether I'm running to be mayor of Victoria or not is irrelevant to the issue. I mean, yeah, there are critics, but if that's all they're criticizing, that this is a political move, then I'm happy. I mean, what I will tell you is I really went down to see what was going on. I mean, we've got a deliberating on budget coming up. There's going to be a significant ask, I'm sure, from police and from bylaw. And what happened on the Tuesday morning that I went down is far more instructive to me than any report that we're going to get at the council table. So really, I think it would be interesting for other councillors to go and have a look and really find out what's happening rather than what they think is happening. And I've seen the pushback online. Some people say I'm lying. Well, I have a host of witnesses that were there. Will tell you that everything I said in that article is absolutely true. There's the, by the way, the pushback is nowhere near the level of support that I'm getting and people thanking me for doing it, because I really unvarnished what was going on. It was blunt. It's exactly what's happening. And I think the other thing, Robin, as you mentioned, I've been a journalist for many years, and all I did was try to use those skills to try to convey to those that don't go down there, that are scared to go down there or don't have the time to go down there or the inclination, what's going on. It's that simple.
Just great to hear again from Councillor Stephen Andrew, and we encourage him to keep speaking out in the media and online. And I've got to say that, there have been people throwing rocks about the amount of crime that actually is taking place in Victoria, that there is a suggestion the crime rates have been dropping and dropping and dropping. And this has all been exaggerated by right-wingers who have an agenda to push policing and push, real tough crime fighting downtown. And let's be clear, very clear, about crime in Victoria. According to Statistics Canada, it shows Greater Victoria is now leading the country in non-violent crimes, such as break-and-enters and drug offenses. But that's not all. We also have the second largest rise in crime severity in Canada. And we're still below some of the big cities in terms of severe crime, places like Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, the big cities. We're not claiming that we have people racking restaurants with machine gun fire. However, it's not sleepy Victoria anymore, and it's disturbing. We need to see things settle down, and we're going to have Matt Waterman on the show next week. Sergeant Matt Waterman from the Victoria Police with the police union is going to talk about all these issues, and really looking forward to that. But John, swinging back now to the big issue, the issue of the century, COVID-19.
Yeah, unbelievable. Unbelievable. It's such a huge weight on everybody. So honored to introduce our next guest, Robin. Dr. Bill Cavers is recently retired Victoria GP, closely aligned to the entire COVID-19 rollout strategy, formerly president of the Doctors of BC, brings decades of medical experience to the Rumble Room. So glad that we're able to secure him for today. Let's zoom him in.
So now joining us in the Victoria Rumble Room is Dr. Bill Cavers, and great to have you on the show.
It's good to be here. Good morning, Robin. Good morning, John, and happy belated Thanksgiving.
Yeah, to you as well. And right off the top, you're no longer practicing medicine, and maybe just very quickly, you could explain why that is, Bill. You look young enough and vital enough. You'd be a big help right now when there's such a need for medical people on the ground. Why did you decide to retire now?
I have a cardiac condition. I'm high risk. So when COVID came in, I continued to provide clinical services up until October of last year. And at that point, I realized that COVID wasn't going away and I didn't dare stay in the field. So I decided to back out because my family was expressing they wanted to see me around for a bit longer.
Yeah, I can't blame them. The thing that I think has surprised all of us about this COVID pandemic, and there have been lots of surprises along the way, including the fact that we've had a pandemic in the first place, but this variant that's come on so fiercely, I think we were starting to feel we were beating the thing. The numbers were getting so low. Then the variant comes up. The numbers are back up again, and we're in a terrible muddle. And people are surprised. And they're surprised to now learn that maybe we're going to have boosters, and this may go on and on. Are you surprised?
Not at all. Not at all. Let's look at a different analogy. We all already know that people should finish taking the full course of antibiotics. If they don't take a full course of antibiotics, they're going to develop a resistant strain. So the human race has taken a halfway approach to the immunizations. Some areas of the world better than others. That's going to start selecting for variants in a viral strain. And so you're going to get the alpha, the beta, the gammas, the deltas. We're up to mu or even further now. I'm not surprised that's happening. And also, I'm afraid that I'm not going to be surprised if we get a variant that's big enough so it's no longer a kappa or a mu variant of COVID-19. You may even see COVID-20 coming along. I don't believe that COVID is gone. I don't think it'll ever be gone now. I think it's going to be part and parcel of our existence, just like influenza, just like the common cold.
Dr. Bill Cavers, first of all, nice to meet you. Thanks for joining us on the Victoria Rumble Room.
Good to be here. Thank you.
So I received my 2 doses, AstraZeneca, April-ish or something like that. And I've lately heard a ton about the booster shot, which Robin has just referenced and you've alluded to. And there's a lot of anxiety around whether or not those of us that are fully embraced the vaccine and all that it means, which is, I think, more than 80% of us. And are we losing our ability to fight this disease? And to what degree do we need the booster shot? I feel like I want to go in today. And so can you just give an overview, please, of the booster shot, the need for it, and all of that to relieve some of our concerns?
So going back to the science of immunizations, no treatment is 100% effective. So some people who have been fully vaccinated are still going to get the virus. We've already seen, however, that in the huge majority of those cases, the severity and the duration of the infection is significantly weaker, significantly shorter. We're also living in this pandemic, in this COVID-19 pandemic, in a real life experiment. We ain't never been here before. We have not been using this type of immunization before. The messenger RNA vaccines are new. And that's another subject we should talk about. But with this vaccination, we don't know how long it's going to last. The drug companies came out and said, oh, you should be having the booster in about 3 weeks afterwards. Why? Because they didn't have any other data. That's what they were stuck with. So BC, in being able to get the data from the UK and Europe with their experiences, was able to say, no, we're going to shift on the balls of our feet and we're going to use our vaccines to immunize people for the first dose, make that a priority and stretch out the interval. And it worked. So how long is it needed between the second dose and a booster? I don't know. I don't know if anybody can tell you that, but is it likely you're going to need a booster? Yes. I mean, we get boosters for tetanus. We get boosters for the flu every year. Yes, you're going to need it for 2 reasons. Number one, we don't know how our immune system is going to react. Number two, we don't know what the virus is going to do because there are going to be different boosters.
I realize it's kind of been a moving target where suddenly it gets a little bit more relaxed and then suddenly it becomes a little bit more strident. Is that going to continue, do you think? Is it always going to be this way in the future? Are we looking at a future where it's going to be a fear-ridden society because of various strains of COVID-19 or COVID-20 or COVID-21? I guess there's no way of really knowing, is there?
There's no way of really knowing. I do not believe it is going to be that way. I believe as the number of people become, the greater number of people become vaccinated and it becomes a thing of day-to-day life, that the severity of the COVID will attenuate, will weaken, it won't affect us the same way. And the reproductivity of the virus within a population will drop off. Unfortunately, I believe it's going to be a significant problem for a lot longer. for the more disadvantaged countries, societies, and areas of the world.
Yeah, so it makes it safe to travel in Canada, but maybe not other places in the world. Bill, I mean, I think about you sometimes. You'll be happy to know this. When I'm out there banging pots and pans, which I used to do, like a lot of my neighbors, you could, at 7 o'clock in the evening, go out on your veranda and you could hear people all over the city banging pots and pans for the healthcare workers that were in there bravely fighting COVID-19.
And
a lot of this happened before the vaccinations really came in.
Yes.
I think people were so appreciative that people would still basically risk their lives, not having any idea the severity or the risk factors would still go in. I'm talking about doctors and nurses and other healthcare professionals. We're not hearing that now. We don't hear that, but they're still jammed with patients. In fact, the numbers of, I don't know if they've ever been higher than they are right now. And yet we also are hearing that doctors and nurses are really getting tired. It's becoming a huge strain on the medical community. I read in the paper people saying we've got to train more doctors, we've got to train more nurses, but you can't instantaneously do that. I mean, looking in your crystal ball, I mean, this isn't something new that's been discussed. It just seems to be ramped up because of the pandemic.
Which the need for more doctors and nurses? Well, if you look at the demographics of our whole population, we're in need of a whole bunch of other professionals because of the baby boomers retiring and the lack of sufficient numbers of younger people taking over those slots. Right now, we are approaching a critical shortage of doctors, nurses, pharmacists, physiotherapists across the whole healthcare spectrum. It's not just related to doctors. Then you take a system that's already starting to falter with the numbers, the lack of numbers, and you put this extra stress on it. It's hard. And then you take a look at what's happening. It won't be very long until we're up to the 2-year anniversary of this virus appearing. People were panic stricken to begin with. Their panic has sort of abated a bit as they retreat into their bubbles, become used to that, they become immunized. But for the healthcare workers, they go in every day, they're still facing the same risks. They're still having to treat people with COVID. They're still at risk of treating a patient that's unknown to them without knowing if that person's fever is from COVID or not. Healthcare workers have died on the front lines from doing their duty. And that's going to continue. I mean, the vaccinations are reducing it, but we've seen lots and lots of accounts of healthcare professionals dying in the line of duty to serve others.
Bill, and this is a question where I'd like your perspective, okay? And impact. We've clearly seen something I do not understand, but anyway, quite a few anti-vaccine, anti-masking protests. I don't get it. However, it's out there. And generally speaking, I look at that and go, well, the uninformed people. Then all of a sudden, whether it's the advent of social media or the way that we can express our opinions so freely, and there are medical professionals saying the same thing, that they don't trust the vaccine. There's not enough science. That's very confusing to a layman like me. What's your perspective on this? What your comments, your feelings of medical professionals in the anti-vax protests?
There are avenues that I could go down here, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to stay on track, okay? Right. So trying to organize doctors, nurses, other educated people into having a consensus has often been equated to herding cats. Everybody, they're educated, we're trained to be analytical and critical. And within the thousands of healthcare professionals across the province, you're going to get a diversity of personalities, some more risk averse than others. Some people will say, oh, okay, I've never eaten that before. I'd love to try it. I'll eat some fugu, sushi. Others will say, I've never had this before. I'm not going to try it in a million years. So when you bring in a new science, such as a vaccination, and with all of the additional emotional, I'll call it baggage around the vaccination with the people dying and the polarization. And we could get into the effect of social media on the polarization as well. But I'm just going to say, with that number of healthcare professionals across the province, you are bound to get some who are more risk averse. And you're bound to get some people in the healthcare professions who don't vote for the same political party as me. I can't understand it.
Bill, there's still lots of anti-vaccine, anti-mask protesters out there. People really upset about these passports and the fact they have to get vaccinated to go to work or have to get vaccinated if they want to go to a restaurant, and talking about their personal freedom being stripped away and how this is a very un-Canadian idea. How do you respond to that?
Everybody has a right to protest. Unless it's hate propaganda, everybody has a right to protest and express their opinion. They don't, however, have a right to physically or verbally abuse other people, nor do they have a right to impair other people from going about their business. And it offends me deeply to have the anti-vaccine protesters impair the ability of ambulances to take sick, critically ill people to the emergency, to impair healthcare professionals going to work. These healthcare professionals are the same people that they're going to rely on if they get COVID. Now, is it anti-Canadian to require some vaccines to get into a restaurant? I'm sorry, I don't see the word restaurant in the Canadian Charter of Rights. You do not have, let's take driving. We have a driver's license. You don't have a right to just climb in the car and turn the key and drive off. Even when you do get a license, I don't care if you're in a hurry, you don't get to do 50 miles an hour through a school zone. There's a thing called a red light. You're expected to stop. There are rules of engagement. You don't get to put other people's lives in jeopardy by doing what you want to do. So let's take restaurants as a different example. You don't get to smoke in a restaurant. Why? Because if you do smoke, the smoke will cause future healthcare concerns to the restaurant staff. Future healthcare concerns? Well, let's talk about COVID. We're not talking 25 years down the road, you'll have lung problems. We're talking in 10 days, you might be fighting for your life. There's a thing called a social contract. You don't get to do anything you want. There is a social contract. You have a responsibility in your behavior on how it influences and affects others in our society, period.
Thank you very much to Bill Cavers. Dr. Bill Cavers, so insightful on so many issues. I hope that we can get through this pandemic. I did hear some light at the end of the tunnel, but it also sounds like we're not out of the doghouse yet. 2 years of COVID-19, could have COVID-20. We'll hope that things get better. And I certainly hope people were listening to Bill Cavers' message. And I wish the protesters at Fairy Creek would start listening a little bit more closely to the courts. It's fine to peacefully protest the logging of old growth forests. They have every right to do that. But now it's time to stop risking injury and lives potentially by dangerously blocking the road to forest industry people who are up there legally now because there is an injunction in place. And these forest workers are not allowed to take down old growth trees for the next 2 years. There's a moratorium on that allows the Pashadat to sit down and talk to government and industry and the protesters to hopefully work out a reasonable solution to this. We don't want to see all the old growth forests knocked down. There's got to be a way. And in the meantime, there should be peace in Fairy Creek. There can still be protest. There can still be placards, but it should be peaceful. And I think the point has been made. Let's hope that this can all be resolved. And in the meantime, I just stand back and hope for the best.
We had Paul Nicholson on. Paul Nicholson from the Rainforest Flying Squad a couple of months ago. He and his group are passionate. Who isn't these days? Clearly I am. Many of these folks been arrested while they've been protesting, standing up for old growth. Great, you're right. Paul's a smart guy. Most of these people have good intentions. We know that, all of us do, but they refuse to budge on their all or nothing stance. I don't see this ending well. I agree with you. I think there'll be more arrests in the weeks ahead.
I just think that it's disturbing to see that. The RCMP have been wedged in the middle. The RCMP have the unenviable job of making the arrests. There's been over 1,000 arrests at Fairy Creek, and they're being pilloried for this. And they're just doing their job. They're just enforcing the law. You may not like the law. Laws can be changed. Certainly that's the intention of a protest, is to try to change the law. But if you continually just break a law, then actually after time, you just have anarchy and laws become meaningless. And I look forward to talking to Matt Waterman, not about Fairy Creek, but I do want to talk to him about the law and how it's being enforced in Victoria. And we keep hearing about police being so frustrated because the justice system seems to be a revolving door. And you really wonder how this is all going to get resolved, John. I'm very concerned about it, and I'm glad we're going to talk more about policing next week. But now it's time to say goodbye.
It's almost like I should sing that. Is there a song that has that in it? I'll find it for our next show. Robin, you're right. There's so much stuff going on. It's emotionally wearing it. It's a drag. We have an opportunity on the Rumble Room to talk these things through, and at the end of it, I kind of feel better. And a lot of people are thinking the same way. Our viewership is going up. We're on all of our combined platforms. We're at over 500 plus people who are following what we and our brilliant, amazing guests have to say.
They're the ones who like us.
That's right.
They say, I like the show. If you say you like the show, then the show comes to you every week, and we like you right back. And we want people to like us. But we've had, 90,000 views now of the Rumble Room?
Total cumulative views, it's like over 90,000, which frankly, I'm shocked. That's great. That's fantastic. So people are, within these troubling, unsettling times, are listening to the show and are feeling, I guess, some comfort and some help in dealing with these tough things that are going on. And there are a lot of ways you can do that. There's the Facebook page, there's the Instagram page, there's the TikTok page. That's right. They're all showing up all around us. And of course, there's the YouTube page, which carries a full inventory. So we invite you to join this merry band of cumulative viewers and followers. We welcome feedback. Okay, we welcome feedback, which we do get. Increasingly, more and more comments are coming up on the show. And for now, I'm always known formally as the Croatian Sensation. Now, currently, the Tulip Avenue Sensation. I'm John Jurisic.
And I was just thinking, 90,000 viewers, that'd be like the same number you'd get at an average Croatian wedding. I'm Rockin' Robin Adair, and rumble on!